Pull up an easy chair by the fire and grab yourself a cup of smoking bishop, because it's time for us to get started on the Ebenezer Scrooge Advent Calendar. Born in Wheatamstead, Hertfordshire, England in 1887, John Reginald Owen studied drama at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art while it was under the management of venerated character actor Sir Herbert Beerbohm Tree. He debuted on the professional stage in 1905 at the age of 18, and he would rocket to stardom after playing St. George in 1911's Where the Rainbow Ends. He not only starred in the production, but also co-authored the play with Clifford Mills, whom he had convinced to develop the story for the stage after meeting her as a young actor and hearing her pitch the story. In the same year that Where the Rainbow Ends debuted, Reginald Owen would make his film debut in the silent film Henry VIII, adapted from Shakespeare and John Fletcher's play by Owen's old headmaster Herbert Tree, who also took on the role of Cardinal Wolsey. Reginald Owen would appear in the film as Thomas Cromwell. This film was one of the first instances of a studio leasing its movies to theaters instead of selling prints, and Barker Motion Photography would later burn the returned prints in a public ceremony on their grounds. While it was often reported that this burning eliminated all prints and negatives, that is understood to be a myth popularized by BMP's own promotional literature. It is believed that negatives and prints were retained by the BMP offices and by Sir Herbert Tree himself, and that a print may have been gifted to King George V for the Royal Archives, not to mention the possibility that several prints may have been misplaced before they could be returned to the studio for destruction. However, the last known public screening of this Henry VIII was in New Zealand on the 24th of November 1911, and since that time, the film has been considered lost. All that is known to still exist of this movie is the on-set still photography and a handful of frames attached to the studio's original UK copyright declaration. Reginald Owen would act in 3 more films in England between 1911 and 1922, but he relocated to the United States in the mid-20s and began working on the Broadway stage. He would appear on the stage playing Algernon Moncrief in The Importance of Being Earnest, and Cardinal Richelieu in a musical adaptation of The Three Musketeers. But as the 20s were drawing to a close, he would appear in his first American film production, 1929's The Letter, adapted from the play by W. Somerset Maugham. Reginald Owen would follow up on this New York-produced film by moving across the continent to Los Angeles, where he would sign with MGM Studios and begin a prolific film career by appearing as Claude Dabney in 1931's The Man in Possession. Owen was a fixture of MGM's 1930s output, appearing in many of their films. He would play Dr. Watson in 1932 for the studio's Sherlock Holmes, and would then take on the role of Holmes in their 1933 production, A Study in Scarlet. His near non-stop film work continued all the way through the 1940s, but in 1950, his career started to slow down. His name still carried enough weight, however, for him to be a popular guest star on television, appearing alongside James Garner in Maverick and in the science fiction anthology One Step Beyond. He would also appear as Admiral Boom in Disney's Mary Poppins, and his final theatrical film role was as General Tiegler in the same studio's Bedknobs and Broomsticks. He made his final television appearance in Topper Returns, which aired the year after Owen passed away from a heart attack at the age of 85. MGM opened the 1930s by becoming the last major studio to convert from producing silent films to sound movies, and it was hoped that large, opulent productions and high-speed, low-budget releases would bring in paying audiences. And it definitely seems to have paid off. MGM hit a pace at one point of releasing a new movie every 9 days, and they dominated the box office for most of the decade. Along the way, they introduced some of the biggest stars of Hollywood, including Joan Crawford, Myrna Loy, Greta Garbo, and Clark Gable. From the 1930s through to the 1950s, MGM was the only major studio that never lost money, even if it did still manage to produce the occasional high-profile flop. The studio had had major success adapting Charles Dickens to the screen previously, with 1935's David Copperfield and, in the same year, A Tale of Two Cities. Not only that, but the studio had a great relationship with the one and only Lionel Barrymore, who at that point had become a Christmas tradition himself, appearing as Ebenezer Scrooge every December on American radio for an adaptation of A Christmas Carol. Moving that tradition to the silver screen probably seemed like as sure a thing as you could find in the film industry. So MGM signed the venerable actor and began pre-production on their next Dickens adaptation. But it wasn't long before MGM found themselves having to replace their featured star. Illness caused Barrymore to drop out of the role. However, the celebrity was determined to see the show go on, even if he was not the one starring in it. He suggested to the production team that they already had the perfect replacement at their studio, his good friend Reginald Owen. And in addition, Barrymore agreed not to do his annual radio appearance that year to avoid any possibility of competing with the movie. With Barrymore's suggested replacement signed to the role, and Barrymore agreeing to help in the marketing of the movie, MGM decided that there was no time to waste. The film had originally been planned for a release in 1939, but the executives decided in October of 1938 that it needed to be their Christmas release for that year. The production team rushed through filming and handed it off to editors, and the film was made from start to finished product in only a few weeks, completing in time to debut December of 1938 at Radio City Music Hall. Even with the rushed production, MGM pinned a lot of their hopes on A Christmas Carol, distributing an at the time unprecedented 375 prints to theaters to open on as many screens as they could fill for the holiday season. The result was a critical and box office smash that saw multiple re-releases through the years to come, and that earned MGM a lot of syndication money as they would sell it to local networks across the United States all through the 60s and 70s.
A Merry Christmas to you, Uncle. God save you. Humbug. Christmas humbug? Uncle, I'm sure you don't mean that.
Humbug I said, and humbug I mean. Merry Christmas. What right have you to be merry? You're poor enough.
What right have you to be dismal? You're rich enough.
Humbug.
As far as the look of Reginald Owen's Scrooge, it's pretty iconic. In fact, many people have pointed out over the years that Karl Barks's Scrooge McDuck bears a more than passing resemblance to Owen's take on the character. He's old, crabby, and, in a twist not typically seen in adaptations, a bit of a hypochondriac, keeping a glass on his desk not for brandy or whiskey, but for cough syrup. And like many of the Scrooges we'll see in the countdown, it doesn't take all that long for this Scrooge to buy into what's happening. The movie clocks in at a nice, crisp 69 minutes long, and in order to make it fit that length, MGM did edit the Dickens out of the story. Or more accurately, they edited the bell out of it. Scrooge's long-lost love is nowhere to be seen in this version, to free up a little more time for seeing Bob Cratchit and Scrooge's nephew Fred singing hymns at church. In addition, MGM wanted their Christmas Carol to play for a more family audience, a concern since at the time, A Christmas Carol was known for being a dark, ominous tale of haunting. So anything that was deemed to be too extreme for younger audiences wound up cut out of the story entirely. So no desperate spirits outside of Scrooge's window, no feral children clinging to the ghost of Christmas Present's legs, and no thieves stealing the curtains off of Scrooge's bed in the future. However, we do get to see Scrooge visit the Cratchits on Christmas Day. We kind of have to, actually, because Scrooge fires Cratchit in the beginning of the movie, so Bob isn't going to be coming in to work the next day. Today, this version of A Christmas Carol is one of the easiest ones to find. It's been released on DVD and Blu-ray, as well as in multiple MGM holiday movie box sets. And it still frequently turns up screening on Turner Classic Movies during most holiday seasons. It wasn't the first Christmas Carol adaptation, but it definitely ranks among the most successful. And with its light tone and quick pace, it set the standard for many adaptations to come. MGM did pack the cast of this film with a lot of their best character actors of the day. Among them, you'll find the celebrity couple of Gene and Kathleen Lockhart as Bob and Mrs. Cratchit, and their daughter June making her film debut in an uncredited role as young Belinda Cratchit. That would be the same June Lockhart who would later play Ruth Martin in Lassie and Maureen Robinson in Lost in Space. So tell me, what do you think of MGM's A Christmas Carol starring Reginald Owen? Drop down into the comments and let me know. While you're down there, make certain that you take a look at that subscribe button and hit that if you haven't subscribed already. There's also a like button and a share button there if you have a friend who could really use a nice discussion about A Christmas Carol. Until next time, I am the Film Optimist saying, watch like it means something.